We have to understand that His grace chases us down every time. His grace will chase us down every time. And all we have to do, and that's what the whole song set was this morning. If you missed the song set, I encourage you to go watch it, because that's what the whole song set was for this morning. It was that His grace covers us, His grace chases us down, His mercy chases us down. And that's what's so promising for us, is that God's grace, God's mercy always chases us down. He never gives up on us, and He is always willing to receive us back. All we have to do is turn to Him, and we'll have the party started all over again.
Those of you that have lost loved ones, or children that are not living right, or children that are, turn their backs on you, have you given up on them? Do you ever stop praying for them? Do you love them any less than you did when they were at home? Of course not. And
right.
God feels the same about us, except somehow we can't even explain it. He loves us more.
Right.
It's a stronger, more dedicated love.
Yeah. And that brings us to Luke chapter 15, verses 22 to 24. This is what it says. But his father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." So the party began.
So do you think that the father started fattening that calf when his son left?
Well, that's interesting, and a lot of times what they did in biblical times is they had a calf they were always fattening up. They were always fattening up for feasts and festivals and what have you. And so that's where the older son comes in, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But that's where the older son comes in, and that's where he becomes so angry. And we'll get into that in a minute. But this is like I want you to. I was telling this to my wife earlier today. It's like this story of the prodigal son is like broken down into 4 acts. The first act, which is the beginning of the story, we already covered this morning, is the first act, if we named it, would be, "I wish you were dead, give me my stuff." And then act 2 was, he comes to his senses, and so if we gave this a title, it would be more like, "What have I done? I was wrong." And then the third act is what we're coming up on, is more like, "Am I in the twilight zone?" Because think about it. The son thinks he's going to be nothing more than a servant from now on. He is prepared to be a servant. That must have been what he was thinking the whole time that he was on the road home, that he was going to be nothing more than a servant.
And he was probably practicing the apology. Okay, will my dad throw me out? Will he let me stay? Will he let me be a servant? What can I do to try to be a servant? What can I do to let him... Can I just get a meal? Can I at least have him throw me this? Do I know where he's probably going through a lot of thoughts in his head.
Right, he's playing all kinds of scenarios on that long road back. But when he gets within eyeshot of his father, the whole script changes. It changes completely. His father sees him coming down the road, and think about it. His father sees him, and you would expect him to I don't know what the son was expecting his father to do, but he
maybe
totally
to yell at him, to fuss
yeah,
at him,
maybe. But his father totally changes the script.
Get off my property. You don't belong here anymore. You left.
But he doesn't do any of that stuff. Instead, the father sees him coming, and the father runs to him.
No, he could still be afraid at that time that his father's coming to him to whoop him.
Kind of like Esau and Jacob. When Jacob was returning to Esau, Jacob was afraid that Esau was going to kill him. And so this could have been what the mindset of the son during this. Just place yourself in his shoes for just a minute. And think about it. The script, but the father, he sees the father running toward him. And the father is not running toward him to punish him, though. But he doesn't know that. He just sees the father coming at him. And he figures the father's he's gonna whoop up on him, like you just said. He's figuring the father's gonna whoop up on him, but that's when things change. The father runs to him, runs up to him, embraces him and his pig smelling slop nasty self. He embraces him. He hugs him, and then he begins to kiss him. I mean, now that's I'm a man, so I'm uncomfortable with the kissing thing.
Well,
But
I mean, did they do the cheek thing like
Yeah.
in their culture? Is that what?
but keep in mind, this father is hugging him, kissing him, glad he's home, with all of the pig stain mess in his. I mean, this kid did not smell good. And notice the father never one time questioned where his son had been, never questioned what happened, never questioned the faithfulness of his son. Never one time. He did not question his son. He just welcomed him back. And then things get even stranger. Okay, I mean, you're in the middle of a twilight zone. This kid is thinking, I'm in trouble. My dad's running to me. He's gonna whip me. But then he comes up on him, falls on him, begins to love on him, hug him, embrace him, kiss him, and then things get even stranger. The father then issues a decree. Go get the best robes that we have. Go get my rings. Go get the best of everything we have. You know that calf that we've been fattening for this feast? Go ahead and kill that calf and bring all of this stuff for my son. We're going to celebrate because he has returned.
Now, I would have thrown in there, give the dude a bath too, but that's just the mom in me.
Yeah, that is the mom in her.
Go take a bath. Brush your fangs.
But instead, I mean, I'm sure he got cleaned up, and the father made sure he was cleaned up. And the father then says, let's start the party. The party starts now. And now I've got black-eyed peas running through my head. Let's get it started. You don't remember that? Never mind. See, that's the heathen stuff anyway. But you see, I mean, put yourself in the position of his son.
Now I'm gonna sit there and try and think of that song and figure out what it is.
I would sing it, but that wouldn't be appropriate for church time. But see, put yourself in the position of the son. You're expecting punishment. You're expecting to be treated horribly. You're expected to be treated as a servant. And instead, your father says things like, kill the fatted calf, get fresh clothes for him, bring my rings here so I can put my rings on him, and let's start the party. Put yourself in his position. I can't even imagine what he was thinking during this time.
He probably was like,
Right. I know what I would think if my dad did that.
this is a trap. This is a trick. What are you doing?
I would think my dad's done lost his mind. I'm telling you, I would think, okay, my dad's gone crazy. He's losing his mind. I'm taking him somewhere to get him checked out because he's not acting right. That's what I would think. That's honestly, and if you're honest as well, you would be thinking the same thing. If you're honest, you would be thinking the same thing that I would be thinking, and that really a lot of people would be thinking. My dad's done gone crazy. He's lost his mind. We need to have him checked out. But, I mean, think about it. A party thrown in your honor with no questions asked. You come home smelling like livestock, smelling like the pigs.
Probably smelling like alcohol and
Having
maybe whatever was at the places he'd been.
Wherever he'd been.
Maybe the perfume of the women. Maybe he probably
No.
quite a few smells on him.
No questions asked, though. Not one question. I mean, this is Twilight Zone stuff, right? It's Twilight Zone. Kylie?
To be honest, I would be like, where have you been?
Yeah.
All that.
That's what I'm saying. We would think our parents are crazy. But that is.
We would get we'll talk about this in the morning.
Yeah.
You go to bed. We'll talk about it in the morning.
Right. And so you know, I mean, we're thinking about this, and this is like Stranger Things, Twilight Zone, some kind of weird.
How do you know what Stranger Things is?
Some kind of strange TV show, X-Files. I mean, something. You know,
X-Files is more your jam.
But you see, but this is God. This is the God that we serve. This is our Father's heart toward us. This is why Jesus came. This is what it's like when we come back to God through Jesus Christ. Through the act that Jesus Christ did, this is what happens. We get a no questions asked party thrown in our favor because we were lost and now we're found. We were once blind, but now we see. That is the God, man, I'm telling you, that's exciting in and of itself right there. Because that's the God we serve because of what Jesus Christ did. And you know what? You're invited to the party. I'm invited. You're invited. Everybody's invited to the party God is waiting on us to take that step. He is waiting on us to come home to him. Anytime we fail, the Lord is always there. He is always there to accept us back, no questions asked. And so we pick up now in Luke chapter 15, beginning at verse 25, and I'll read the rest of it now, the rest of this parable. It says, meanwhile, the older son, now this is where the older son comes in, so pay attention. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, I lost my place. Sorry. Okay, so meanwhile, the older son was in his fields working. When he returned home, he heard the music and dancing in the house. And so this was an absolute throwdown party is what this was. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. And they said, your brother is back, he was told. And your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother, here it is, the older brother became angry. He was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out to him and begged him, but he replied, all these years, hear it in his voice.
It does say he was gone for years.
Yeah, it does. His father came out, and here it is. And that's true. That's a good point. Thanks for pointing that out. See, in verse 29, it says, but he replied, all these years I slaved for you, and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So, you understand what's going on here. This is like Act 4. And if we had to put a name on Act 4, maybe it's I'm angry, the party isn't for me, or, it's not my party and I'll cry if I want to, or something like that. I mean, this is what we're seeing here. This is Act 4, and the older son is angry.
Hulk mad.
Party
not for me.
That is essentially what's going on. So he's wanting to go out and smash. No, never mind. But he's angry. He is literally angry at the father for not doing this for him. He is missing the whole point that his son, that his brother was out there in the world and they didn't know where he was for years, according to what was said. For years, they didn't know where he was.
They thought he was dead.
They thought he was dead. The father thought he was dead until he finally came home and he finally accepted the grace of the father. The whole point of the brother, of his younger brother, is missed with the older brother. It's totally missed. Notice his attitude. Whoa, if we're not careful, we tend to have this attitude as well. We tend to have this kind of attitude. We get upset when people who we don't think deserve to be saved get saved. If they're out there and they're homeless, we get upset if we serve them a meal. If they're running low on money and they've squandered all their money, we get upset if the church tries to bless them and give them money to help them out. We think it's our job to police these people. We think it's our job to determine who deserves the salvation that Jesus provides. When it's not us, it is Jesus Christ. He is the one that determines, not us. Yeah. See, and she's mentioning Ted Bundy, and that's something I'll mention that in a little while, but we'll talk about that in a second.
It's not in your notes, is
it? It's close. It's close. I had that in my mind.
Really?
But you see,
look at us being all together and
but
stuff.
but the attitude of the older brother is hateful, and he's just flat out angry. Jealousy. Prideful. I mean, he's not wanting to share in his father's elation over the fact that his son has returned home.
I don't know if he
He's
liked
not
his brother.
wanting to join in with the party.
He wasn't too excited over his brother, was
No,
he?
no. And that's the whole that's the whole problem that we see in churches today.
So what was worse? The younger brother looking at the father just for money, or the older brother not seeing the younger brother, as a soul, as a person, but looking at the father as, well, you've given him more than me.
Both are wrong.
So they both looked at the father.
They
for money.
both were wrong. That's absolute right. The older brother thought the younger brother wasn't deserving, and the younger brother didn't think that he didn't think that he needed to wait. And so they both looked at the father and said, "What's wrong with you?" Essentially, that's what they both did. What's wrong with you? I mean, this older brother says, "Why does he get a party? I've been here working and slaving and doing all this stuff. I've been picking up his slack. Why does he get a party and I never got one?" That's what, and honestly, that's what we think as well.
But the servant got it. The servant was like, he was dead, but he's alive. He was lost, but now he's found.
Right. And that's the crazy thing about this whole thing. And notice that the father, though, is still patient with this son that's pitching a fit. Notice the father is still patient as he calms his son down, and he says, "You've been here the entire time. You never asked for it. You never asked me for it. All you had to do was ask, and I would have given it to you. That's all you had to do." And we don't hear anything of the son past that. The father says, "We have to rejoice now. We have to celebrate now because your brother was once lost. Your brother is now found. Your brother it's like he's been resurrected from the dead. He was blind, but now he sees, and here he is. We have to throw this party for him." And the older son totally missed it, but we're not told of a reaction to the older son. It's interesting. It's kind of an open-ended story. You pick how the older son because they offer that now on Netflix. You can be with Bear Grylls and you choose the adventure.
Well, they have some books that kids have at the library. You can choose the ending.
Yeah, you choose the ending. You have to think because it's an open ending, and so we have to see ourselves. We are either one of the two people in this story. Well, I mean, God the Father is obviously the Father. He's the only one patient to deal with our mess. He's the only one patient enough to deal with us. Either way, he's the only one patient enough to deal with us. And we have to understand that we're one of the two sons. We are one of the two sons. Either we've walked away from God, or we're jealous of those who come in to experience God's salvation. We're one of the two people. And I can see myself in both of them.
But the older son also is one who has stayed with God, who has maybe been a faithful Christian, but he didn't quite have that relationship with, like in the beginning you talked about, he didn't quite see the father for who he was.
Right.
And he didn't see the son, the brother, as a soul.
Right.
Sometimes Christians get so focused on themselves, even though they've served for years, they don't see those people outside the church as souls. They don't see them in the loving manner that they should. They don't see them with grace and mercy. They're focused on themselves and what they should get. I'm going to heaven. I can't wait till I get to the pearly gates. They're focused so much on
Their
going
escape
home.
songs.
Yeah, that they don't focus on what it is God has for
We
them
all
to do
get to
here.
heaven, roll with called up yonder.
And how, they store up all their stuff and they're kind of greedy with their own things, but they don't look at how they can bless others, how they can work for God here.
Exactly.
And they miss a lot.
Exactly. And see, whenever we come into God's presence, our attitude has to be checked at the door. We've got to check our attitude at the door. Anytime we come into a church service, we got to leave our attitudes outside, because we never know who's going to be inside the church. We never know who's going to come to Jesus. We never know. It could be somebody you'd be surprised at.
And that person would probably love God more than anybody.
It could be a deacon in the church that needs to come back to God. It could be the pastor himself who needs to repent. I mean, seriously, so our attitudes need to be checked at the door. We can't bring our attitudes into God's presence, whether it's in God's presence in our personal time or it's God's presence in the sanctuary. We have to check our attitudes all the time. And we do that by the Word of God. We have to do it by the Word of God. We have to. See, we must welcome anyone that darkens the door of our church.
Very much
We
so.
must welcome any, if they don't smell like you, if they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, we have to accept them just as they are, because we were accepted just as we were. And, I'm telling you, we got to check our feelings, and we got to check our thoughts at the door.
Kind of reminds
we have
me
to.
of that song "Forgiveness" and the motives behind it.
Yeah, and that's too long of a discussion to get into there, but you should check the story of the Matthew West song "Forgiveness" out, because it is amazing. It is absolutely tremendous. And see, and this is why we need to check our attitudes at the door, because I've always said that when we get to heaven, if we get to heaven, we're going to be surprised at three different things. You can probably quote this because you've heard me say this numerous times.
I've heard you say it for like 38 years.
Yeah, or 42 or 59 or something.
73.
See, we're going to be surprised at three things. First of all, we're going to be surprised that we're there. Because, we're honestly, we're going to be surprised we're there, because we all know what we do. We all know.
And we fail daily.
And we do. I'm not perfect all day long. Sometimes I have to run by the cross, numerous times. That's just the way it is. But we're going to be surprised that we made it. The second thing that we'll be surprised at is who else made it, who's there. And this is where she's talking about Ted Bundy. Because if you know anything about Ted Bundy, you know he was a horrible, horrible man. His actions were horrible. He did unspeakable things to numerous women. And they were unspeakable. But I can tell you, I've heard the interview. The last interview he ever did before he received the death penalty was that he did an interview with James Dobson from Focus on the Family, and he died a Christian. So when we get to heaven, you're going to be surprised at who else made it, because you don't know.
Paul was a horrible person.
Paul was,
What he did to the Christians was unspeakable.
He may not have physically done it himself, but he was there in full support of it. But God. Mm-hmm. And the third thing you're going to be surprised at, you're going to look around and see the people that didn't make it. Dare I say, there's going to be pastors that are going to be surprised they're not there. They're going to be surprised they're not with Jesus. I'm not casting judgment on anyone. Don't want you to misunderstand that, but you're going to be surprised when you're there. You're going to be surprised at who else made it, and you're going to be surprised at who did not make it. I want to be part of the ones that do make it.
Yes. Amen.
And so anytime anyone comes into the saving grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ, we must rejoice, because, we are essentially throwing a party with the angels. When one soul rejoices, when one soul comes to know Jesus, the word tells us that all of heaven rejoices over one soul, over one person. And so, it's not for us to judge who comes to Jesus. It's not for us to make that determination. Our job is to rejoice over those that come in off the street. Our job is to rejoice over those that were once lost but now are found.
Yes.
It is our job to receive them into the family and to love them unconditionally.
Yes.
We've always said it. It's our job to go out there to cast the hook out there. And it's our job. God will bring them in. But when God brings them in, that's where our responsibility stops. God will clean them up. Yes, we teach them. Yes, we train them. We disciple them. That is true. But we do so out of love and compassion, because one time we were there.
Not condemnation.
Not condemnation. Not judgment. We do so in a loving manner. And we do so because that's what Jesus told us to do. Mm-hmm. To go out and make disciples. To make disciples. So the good news is you're invited to this party. So why don't we strike up the band and let's get the party started? Because that's what happened with the prodigal son's father.
You don't want me to sing, are you?
I know. You probably don't want to. I don't mind you singing, but
Oh, you're so cute.
So But the one thing that we must understand, and we're almost done, I promise, I'm closing. One thing that we must understand is that we must have the spirit of repentance in our hearts. We have to be teachable. We have to be pliable in the hands of God. But most of all, we have to have a contrite heart and a broken heart. We must have that in the presence of God. If we want Him to bless us, if we want Him to help us, if we want Him to reach inside of us and change us, we have to be pliable to Him. Psalm 51 verse 17, this is what David tells us. This is the psalm when David messed up. David messed up bad. He committed murder. He conspired to commit murder. He committed adultery. He got a woman that wasn't his wife pregnant. It was the wife of one of his friends, one of his close friends. He was listed in the 30 mighty men of David. So David knew this guy. David knew his wife. And he had an affair with her, got her pregnant, and then conspired to kill his friend with the leader of his army, and then succeeded in killing this man. So David messed up bad. And in Psalm 51, this is when he was confronted by Nathan. Nathan confronted him, and this is what he said. The sacrifice you desire, he's speaking to God, the sacrifice you desire is a broken spirit. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God. We must have that. So don't lose your blessing. Don't lose your spot with God over your bad attitude. Rejoice with whoever comes in. Mm-hmm. God has no favorites. No. God has no favorites. You're invited to the party. Everybody out there on the street